Welcome to another Book Talk with Tracy. I'm back talking about books, especially my books. And today I want to talk about just this little book. It's not very thick. It's called Life is a Highway. And the subtitle is Advice and Reflections on Navigating the Road of Life. It's just a small book, as I said, and it's kind of like a Bible study, I suppose, or you can use it that way. It has been used in small groups, or you can just read through it. And it's a bit of a memoir in some ways, too. There are questions at the end of each chapter. And I just want to tell you a little bit about how the book came to be. So I was asked to speak at a ladies' retreat quite a number of years ago now at a place called Camp Sagatawa. It's on Moberly Lake. It's in northern British Columbia. And part of the thing that was going on of significance at that time was the 70th anniversary of the building of the Alaska Highway. Camp Sagatawa isn't on the highway per se, but it is fairly close. So that was something that was brought up to me when I was asked to speak at this ladies' retreat. It was in the fall, I believe, of 2012. Probably that makes sense. In any case, and then the other thing was they had chosen their theme verse, which was from Luke chapter 24, which talks about Jesus meeting up with some people on the road to Emmaus after his resurrection, actually. So it's a story about these men, Cleopas and his friend, and they're talking about, what had just happened, that Jesus had been crucified and things. And then Jesus comes along. And at first they don't even recognize that it's him. But during that journey on the road, he explains to them the scriptures, explains who he is. And then later on in the story from Luke chapter 24, he reveals himself to them and they see who he was. So being as that was kind of a road trip, and also the fact that the part of the theme for the weekend was the building of the Alaska Highway, a very famous road. So that's kind of where I came up with this theme for the book, which is based on those talks. So of course, first I did the weekend. I was speaking on these various themes, and then I thought, hey, maybe this will make a good little devotional book. So I put them together in this little book called Life is a Highway. And I do like Tom Cochrane too, if you happen to be singing that song in your head. But a couple of interesting things about that whole theme. First of all, with the Alaska Highway, it's a place that is near and dear to my heart because I've actually lived on the Alaska Highway in 3 different locations. My family and I moved from Saskatchewan to British Columbia in 1995, and we lived in Fort St. John, which is a community on the Alaska Highway. And then a couple years later, we moved to Dawson Creek, which of course is mile 0 of the highway. And then a few years later, we ended up moving to the Yukon, which of course you can't really get there unless you take the Alaska Highway. Well, I guess you can up through the interior BC, but in any case, we lived in Watson Lake, Yukon, which is another town on the Alaska Highway. So I've lived on 3 different towns, and I will say that in all of those communities, the highway and the folklore around the building of the highway is a really big part of their identity. If you go to any of the museums in that area, you'll see lots of memorabilia and talk about the highway. Watson Lake, for instance, is famous for the signpost forest, which started with a lonely soldier from the United States who put up a sign to his hometown, so and so many thousand miles away, and he put that sign up in Watson Lake while stationed there building the highway, and then it kind of grew up around there and people started putting their own signs, and you can go there. There's thousands and thousands of signs in that signpost forest in Watson Lake. So there's lots of cool things. And of course, then because we lived in the Yukon for a number of years, we drove up the Alaska Highway to various locations. In fact, we drove all the way to Delta and beyond to Fairbanks and around Alaska. But anyways, Delta, Alaska is sort of the end point of the Alaska Highway. So I've been on every single inch of that highway many, many times. And so it does sort of play an important role in part of my journey through life. And speaking of journeys, because that was sort of the theme, I have, in fact, moved myself more than 30 times. Sometimes it was within the same community, but my husband's a bit of an adventurer, and we've lived in many locations, a lot of them north of the 60th parallel. We've been in the Yukon, as I mentioned. We've lived in the Northwest Territories. We've lived in Churchill, Manitoba, which is called the polar bear capital of the world, where polar bears really do roam the streets, and many, many locations in between and up and down. So a lot of my journey through life, I guess, has been kind of on the move. And so that's one aspect that I talk about in the book is, moving a lot and what that means, and how you navigate that. Of course, I use the Luke 24 chapter of scripture that they suggested for the ladies' weekend as my jumping off point, and come up with various points, that then I can talk about various anecdotes from my own life, trials and triumphs. I was blind for a time and have had other health issues and just a whole ton of things. So like I said, in some ways the book is a little bit of a memoir too. Of course, it was written published in 2013. So there's been a whole lot of stuff happened since then, like 8 or 10 years worth of other things that I could write about and expand on. But for the purpose of this book and for the topic at the ladies' retreat, it just seemed like all of those various anecdotes really came together nicely. And it's small. It's a very easy read, as I said, or you can use it as a study guide, because there's lots of scripture and lots of reflective questions at the end, and points, jumping off points for discussion and things like that. So that is this little book. It's also very inexpensive. If most places it sells for between $5 and $7 or something. So, you can pick up a copy really cheaply online or at a bookstore. So if you're interested, check it out. Of course, this and all my other books, you can read up about them on my website, which is tracykrause.com. There's no E in Tracy. There are 2 S's in Krause. And I really, really appreciate it when people put up reviews. If you've read a book or even skimmed through it and enjoy parts of it, reviews on Amazon and elsewhere online are really, really important. I know I keep stressing that, and maybe you're getting tired of me saying it, but it's true. So I appreciate the support. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I just hope that you have a really blessed rest of your day. See you.